Hello, and welcome to the Anexinet Infrastructure Modernization Podcast. Here on AIM, we invite industry professionals and subject matter experts on to discuss current trends and technology topics. Today, we will be talking remote work, what else these days, with Citrix. With me are Ray Kane, Principal Sales Engineer for Enterprise Customers from Citrix, and Josh Molina, End User Compute Architect here at Anexinet. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well. Thanks, Chris. This is Ray Kane from Citrix. Again, as Chris said, I'm a principal sales engineer, focusing in the enterprise space. What that means is customers that are 5,000 users and above. I've been with Citrix a little over 4 years now, and have been a consultant along the way, as long as a customer as well.
And this is Josh Molina, End User Computing Architect, as mentioned, here with Anexinet. Citrix has been the majority of the work that I do.
And Josh, your hands-on experience is with customers of all different shapes and sizes.
Yeah, that's correct. There's different organizations, different industries. We're talking about like finance industry to like the car industry and things like that. So it's always nice to get involved with different environments. It's always a great experience to learn new things.
So I'll open this to both of you guys. So COVID-19 has obviously flipped our world upside down. We can't really talk about much else these days without immediately turning right back to the situation we find ourselves in. What does it look like from your perspective? How have businesses been affected? How have they reacted? How have they reacted successfully, not successfully? Basically, what do things look like out there from your side?
So, Chris, I think, the biggest thing and the biggest change for a lot of people was how quickly this happened. A lot of people in the industry right now, a lot of CTOs are coming forward and saying, the digital transformation that people were actually trying to do for years now kind of happened overnight. We're seeing that a lot at Citrix, where we for 30 years have been kind of preaching work from any device, any location. Some of our other slogans are, work is a thing you do, not a place you go. We've kind of lived this whole phenomenon for us, that's ongoing right now, for some time. Obviously we do have people that do go to an office every day at Citrix, but, we have this, work from home policy that allows most of our employees at least 1 or 2 days a week at home. We definitely saw some scale up of our resources for our end users internal to Citrix, and we're trying to help with customers, doing the kind of that same journey at this point, as we're kind of going through the COVID-19 stuff.
And just to add on some stuff, we're seeing a big rise of working from home, which means the rise of more video conference tools. One of the things that it makes it a little bit easier in regards to, when you work from home, what options are there? To me, Citrix is very well equipped to handle a lot of these things with using video, audio, it has a lot of really in-depth policies that you can set for speech and audio, for video as well. So it makes it very easy to talk to customers or help out with regards to those big rise of things that we're seeing today from working from home.
Yeah, Josh, one of the things that I have seen an influx of is the video calls. My team that I work on is spread out between Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, and Tennessee. So there's a big geographical distance. I only get to see my team but once or twice a year in person. But again, we've actually had the upflex of using something like GoToMeeting, Zoom, with the video aspect of it. Pre-COVID world, we can go out and see everybody. During this whole time, we're not being able to do that. So we're trying to adapt and find other ways where, using these technologies. And, again, as you said, Citrix is playing a pretty good part of, optimizing this through that experience so that people can kind of do that. And we really need to kind of, look back at this, once we get back to the new norm, as everybody is calling it, and really focus on what a digital transformation means, and kind of really focus in on that. And instead of it taking years, let's hopefully get it down to a couple of months to be a refined process.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. One of the things that this situation has thrown upon us is we went immediately, like you said, and we went 100%, which is kind of an infrastructure change that a lot of organizations were not necessarily prepared for. A few people being remote here and there is fine. Now we find ourselves in a situation where it's 100% of the workforce. So that's already a drag on the infrastructure that exists, and the enhanced need for things like video calls is requiring a lot of changes, enhancements, not just in terms of getting larger or getting more servers. It is changing the infrastructure that people need. Yes?
100%. I mean, I want to say the first couple of days that everything went into a shutdown was scramble to get everybody back online from their house. And, I met with a lot of people that said, hey, how are we going to do this? And how are we going to do it the fastest, most economical, and the least challenging to our end users? And, there was a lot of conversations that were had, around this, concerns about bandwidth, concerns about, throughput on appliances, whether they were from Citrix or, another vendor, to be able to handle this onset of people. And that was really the kind of the first couple days of my job, was saying, hey, here's what we can do. Here's how you can do it. You might need to up this, you might need to up that. It was really looking at, how can we get the best user experience out there, for the cheapest bang for their buck, and making sure that they can, continue to do all their work as usual.
Yeah, I agree. And I was actually reading an article. It was from Shodan. Said basically, it was saying that because of the situation, there's a lot more port 3389, right? RDP being exposed to the internet. And so that becomes, when working from home, security is also a big thing, right? So like a lot of perhaps organizations were not really prepared, and they didn't have, a good user experience with regards to having some type of single sign-on access for the users when they work from home, or more importantly, right, for security, a multi-factor authentication. And so that's something that is what I'm seeing questions coming about, rising with regards to like, hey, how can we connect from home, working from home, but also be secure as well? How can we not allow user endpoint devices to access the clipboard, to copy graphics and things like that? So where it becomes much of a more easier conversation when you're looking for remote workforce options, that if an option has a nice security basis, that would be more acceptable to an organization.
Yeah, that's a good point, Josh. I mean, I think that, everybody kind of took a step back and said, hey, how can we get people online, and kind of, missed the security boat 100%. I even saw some of my customers, with the first iteration that they had out, just to make sure that they get people online, and make sure that they can continue businesses as close to normal as possible. There's so many different ways to kind of get people access to that, whether it be, through some of our stuff at Citrix, where you can actually use a Citrix Netscaler to, proxy that RDP traffic in a more secure fashion, or, even publishing RDP through a Zen app or Zen desktop session, or what it's referred to now as Citrix virtual apps and desktops. There's so many different ways to kind of do that. One of the big things that I always see people kind of miss when they buy Citrix virtual apps and desktop licensing is, kind of our remote PC access solution, which I actually had a customer in the retail industry. It was a grocery store chain that actually went from, roughly 200 some users, normal Citrix users, and they actually scaled up for this another 500 users, and actually those 500 users were not using nothing but remote PC access. And they were able to kind of do this over a weekend to actually get this. And all it is basically installing an agent on a physical PC that sits in the office and using Citrix to access it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually one of the least intrusive options, right? That I would say that perhaps a lot of people who have that platinum licensing weren't aware of that they had that option, right? But they definitely have the ability to utilize that, and then doing things like utilizing Wake on LAN or group policies to make sure these machines that sit in the office that normally the users would have used if they were there present in the office, right? These machines can be now power managed, kept online, powered up. That is, to me, the most least intrusive option. I would say number one option. And then, of course, Citrix has an option to leverage the cloud, right? So if that's something that an organization wants to do, then they can absolutely do so in regards to that. But yeah, definitely remote PC access is really nice.
Yeah, again, you bring up the cloud, and I had a couple customers that they didn't have some of the infrastructure set up to be able to utilize these clouds and get back to stuff that was still on-prem. I had one customer in the automotive industry that I support. Basically, they needed to be able to get 700, 800 more people online, in a pinch. And they had no connectivity into Azure, AWS, Google. And they said it was going to take them a couple days to get something set up in AWS, as they were already working on a contract. But, they looked at this and said, this is going to be 2 or 3 weeks worth of work, and it's not something we're ready to kind of take on. But, every business, I think, has to be prepared. So that they can, make sure that they have everything that they need to be able to scale up, scale out, whatever they need to do to be able to take an increased number of users on. One of the other things that I was actually on the phone with a customer this morning, and, they're already talking about making work from home a kind of a, more of a mandatory thing. Right now it's an optional thing there. And I'm seeing that a lot as well. Where companies are starting to say, hey, we should really start testing this, real life, and have people work from home, 1 or 2 days a week, and so I honestly think that, post COVID, I guess where we're at right now, I think you're going to see a lot of companies start looking at reducing some of their footprint, and this is going to kind of be an influx in the IT infrastructure that's needed.
Definitely. We really didn't think that much about working from home, or if we would ever see that, right, as such a global scale. But this pandemic definitely is reshaping the way that, or is reshaping, and will continue to reshape the way that organizations, businesses function, where perhaps they didn't really think about working from home. Just getting back to like the security piece, I wanted to mention, like I really liked the demo that was presented in Citrix Summit earlier this year, with the keylogger, the anti-keylogger feature, and the anti-screen capture feature from Workspace, that Workspace client, where formerly it was called a Citrix Receiver. And to me, I think those options, like, especially now, is something that is really helpful, because it really protects your app, right? So like if you have an app that you're entering the passwords, that Workspace client would protect you from keylogging or those malware that are trying to like steal your login info, or the screen captures, like where organizations sometimes have business confidential images or documents. So, having a software that is able to capture or clipboard graphics, that will protect it. And so that information stays with the organization and does not escape. So I feel like those are very important features to have with regards to that new Citrix Workspace. So that's something that I'm seeing is very, when I mention those things to people and potential customers or existing customers, they're like, wow, how do I set that up? So that's something real nice.
Yeah, those new features are awesome. It's just adding to some of the things that we have had for years around cut, copy, and paste, and being able to restrict printing and file transfers and stuff like that. But this kind of takes it to that next level of saying, hey, we've always been a screen scraping technology. How can we find more ways to kind of make ourselves more secure? One of the things that we actually came out with, I want to say probably a year or two ago, was the watermarking of sessions, which was kind of like our first step into, securing the overall, image that Citrix is portraying on the screen. I know that most everybody is on a version that has this feature. And this is just some of the stuff that we're doing to make sure that, again, the data stays secure. We don't want to have people use our solution to allow, the people to just take screenshots and do data exfiltration and stuff like that to, get around, IDPs and stuff like that. So, this just kind of takes that to the next level. And the anti-screen scraping, I think, is an awesome tool. I think that, since, we, kind of started this, back in a beta, sense, we actually, I saw it pretty early on, and it's actually come a little bit of ways, forward. And I think we still have some stuff that we need to, kind of include in that situation. We do have a policy at Citrix, so we do a BYOD, which, we basically, employees can buy their own laptops, do whatever they want. They just have to use a Citrix connection to get back to them. But, since it's my personal device, Citrix could actually have that anti-key logging software turned on, that basically it's going to garbage up all of my keystrokes before it hits my virtual desktop. So it actually won't see any of that. So it's definitely really cool technology that we're pretty excited about here at Citrix. And, we hope to see it, kind of evolve in the future.
So we just talked about a couple of products in quick succession. I think it might make sense to go through them one at a time, talk about a couple of use cases, things either that you have seen or situations that make sense where this would be the solution that resolves the issue that people might be having as quickly and as securely or efficiently as possible. So if you guys could just take some time, talk through the differences and the details and the use cases for remote PC access, Citrix managed desktops, and then workspaces.
Sure. So remote PC access is really a solution that you use a desktop that sits on someone's in someone's cube or office, and all we do is actually install the Citrix VDA agent, which is our client that connects into our brokering service and allows access into that desktop. As Josh said a little earlier, it's kind of really, the least intrusive kind of thing. Most people, on a desktop have some sort of packaging software where we can package that up, deploy it out to many machines, and then ultimately, create all the connections back to, to map those users. Actually, one of our architects at Citrix actually came up with a PowerShell script that will map users to it. So actually reducing the amount of time needed to kind of manage some of this, because obviously there's a lot of one-to-one mappings that would need to be created in there.
So that one, to me, it feels especially valuable for a company or a customer or an employee who's being told work from home 100% of the time. They really have never had that kind of need or exposure or requirement. By installing this agent and by setting up the secure connection, that user is literally using their desktop computer. So everything that they're used to in terms of their workflow is still there. It's just an additional layer that Citrix adds on top of it so that that user can get to that resource inside of their own company in a way that is secure.
Correct. 100%. That's definitely, kind of what the whole idea was is, let's not disrupt as much as we can. and again, this technology's been around since the Zen Desktop 5 days. So we're talking probably close to 5 or 6 years at this point. That this has been around. It's just one thing that we've kind of it's been a hidden gem for us, in case of like these situations. But, when I'm talking to customers, I live in the, central Pennsylvania, where we get a little bit of, powdery white stuff in the winter. Not so much this year, but, in years past, where most companies, either close or people have to take, PTO days because they didn't take their laptop, or, they have a desktop on their office space. This is one of those technologies where, that 1 or 2 times that you need to access something at home, this is that great, a great solution that it really doesn't cost you, much more if, you're already licensing everybody for Citrix. So, there's not much you need to do from a Microsoft standpoint, depending on your ELA program and stuff like that, because, it's just using, a client access software that's already kind of built into that.
Yep, and on the Citrix managed desktops, that's one of the newer products, right, from Citrix. And the thing there is that it has a great integration with Microsoft's new service offer in regards to Windows Virtual Desktop. Not maybe if remote PC access is not a fit, then I would say, this would be probably the next option that would be least intrusive, where they can quickly, it's a turnkey solution. They can quickly turn up things up in Azure, and they can bring their own Azure subscription or utilize the Citrix subscription as part of that service offering, and start using the Windows 10 Enterprise multi-session. Or if they don't want to use that, they have other options, but it's real nice. It supports non-domain and also domain joined as well.
Yeah, I definitely. I mean, that's actually a really cool technology. We had that in a private tech preview for a handful of our customers, before we GA'd it to the kind of the world, and one of the things that some people said was they wanted an option for non-domain join PCs that potentially were on kind of on their network but not on their network. The use case around the non-domain join PC that usually comes to mind is contractors being able to let them get into systems that they need to get into. So basically, this system would sit in our Azure tenant, and we would just do some VCP peerings across, or network peerings across, so that we could get that traffic over into your local domain, but try to keep them as segregated as possible, so they're not on your network and just poke the holes through firewalls that they need access to. Along with that, and Josh, I don't know if I mentioned you said this or not, but we also can do server-based desktops in that solution as well. That was definitely something that we wanted to make sure we stuck a little bit to our guns, because we think that a server-based desktop can give you just as much performance as a Windows 10 desktop. It's just one of those things that you see a lot of people when they think VDI, they think Windows 10. I've always been in the mindset of there's very few people that actually need a full-blown Windows 10 environment, and those use cases do exist. It's out there, and obviously Microsoft kind of saw that as well because of the Windows 10 multi-session. Kind of bringing that whole terminal server, kind of look and feel, or I guess, or the underlying infrastructure inside of that over into Windows 10. Honestly, it's going to be awesome for the UC space once it starts becoming more and more adopted. I see a lot of limitations that'll be lifted because it's actually running Windows 10 instead of server. So applications support is usually a lot better. So I definitely like where Microsoft is going with this. We do a lot with Microsoft, but we try to remain as agnostic as possible, with everything that we do, just because people want choice. They don't want to be able to be stuck in one single solution that's out there. They want to be able to move between clouds and stuff like that. And I think we try to keep that option as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that people want choice, I couldn't have said it better myself, because I do see and I saw that again in Citrix Summit. There was a really really nice session where it talked about with Windows Virtual Desktop. Part of that uh, planning on Microsoft's side was that they acquired FS right? So FS was a pretty big player in the EUC space, and in regards to handling user profile data, putting it in a nice container, along with other things that it can do. But it's nice to see how Citrix allows people to have that choice where they can either utilize Citrix user profile, or they can use FS and it works well both with Citrix Managed Desktops, or if you're doing the Citrix Virtual Apps on Desktop service within Citrix Cloud. So
Yeah, again, I even think we see a lot of our consultants, I actually have a customer right now that has Citrix Consulting on site, and they're evaluating, they're actually doing a bake-off between Citrix User Profile Manager and FS Logics. You know, Personally speaking, when you start looking at the two technologies, they're very similar. It really just depends on, what you're looking to do and what your end result is. If you have a big OneDrive install base, if you have a big Teams install base, you want to be able to use, OSTs and stuff like that. FS Logics, hands down, is definitely something that is, you kind of need in your arsenal in the EUC space. And it definitely fit the bill for a number of years, I think. But it had some advanced features in there, and it got the job done. I look at some of the other Citrix Ready partners that are out there. What was Res Software, now Avanti, and also AppSense, kind of got rolled under that umbrella as well. These guys have been out there in the EUC world for some time, and really have focused on, trying to augment the user experience. And that's something we've tried to do as well. And we're open to, anybody that wants to come out and, try to make something better. And, we're willing to work with those people, to make sure that, at the end of the day, it's all about the end users. So we're going to try to, do that as much as we can. A couple things you brought up at Citrix Summit a couple times, and that's where we do the kind of the employees, the partners, and also customers to kind of showcase our technologies. Unfortunately, with the events that we have, kind of have come up with the COVID and the social distancing, we have decided to postpone this event. So we're not canceling it. But we're actually going to move it to a virtual event, free virtual event in the fall time frame. So be on the lookout for that. We have put some other calls out there to kind of augment some of the stuff that we normally do at the Citrix Synergy event, with subject matter experts and getting people to kind of listen to what's new from Citrix and stuff like that. So we're trying to make sure that everybody, can get through what they need to get through. And then hopefully once we get back to that new norm, we're able to, really focus in on making end user experience, a good choice for everybody. And Josh, I don't know if you have anything about Synergy. I know you've been to a couple of them, as well. And, maybe you want to share your experience with that.
yeah, Synergy is a great place to basically connect with people. I mean, it's sometimes when you run into someone, you definitely see that saying is a small world, right? But it's real nice to connect with people that you worked with in the past, people that you make new friends, and you learn a lot. You learn a lot of great information, and to me is like sometimes I look for like technical stuff, technical sessions. But one of the things that I've found is that there are also sessions that kind of just help you with things like, for example, in what I do in consulting, how to manage your time better. And those are things that not only would help you in your work, but also helps you in your daily life. And also, like I mentioned, the Citrix user group community has a lot of great information. There's a lot of, like, last week, I actually registered to a session that was, I think it was titled "Suddenly I'm Working from Home, Now What?" right? And Martin Zugek from Citrix was on it, and it was real nice to see like how some of these individuals basically are real. They just basically said, hey, I'm dealing with family, kids coming in, schoolwork. They need help with schoolwork, right? Because they're not in school, and then it's nice and it makes you feel normal, right? Like you're not the only one dealing with this type of situation that's being put out or everyone else is dealing with right now.
No, 100%. I feel like that's the biggest thing, and Martin's definitely a very animated and awesome presenter. I've listened to a lot of his stuff, not because I'm forced to, but because I want to, because he knows how to explain something at kind of a personal level instead of hey, I'm trying to teach you this because you're required to do it. I sat through an authentication authorization and I remember being in Minneapolis, and listening to him, and he basically explained it to all of us in the room like he was explaining it to his wife. He said, "There's a lot of good people that work at Citrix, for Citrix as a partner of Citrix." And there's a lot of great information that's out there. I will say the Citrix user group community, definitely great events to attend. I really, hope that, everybody shares what they know. I feel like that's the best, the best way for the community to kind of learn, from everybody is, kind of sharing what they know.
So one other idea in terms of companies that are dealing with this sort of thing. We talked about people that had to kind of scramble and get their workforce efficient as fast as possible. But there's another side to that, which is planning for that future, setting up the next environment, setting up the next ideal workplace. What are your guys' thoughts on, what Citrix is positioning, what they have provided? For example, a lot of work is now being done not on applications that reach back into a company's data center. It works either as a SaaS-based thing or something that is homed in another company entirely, which makes having installations of apps on a desktop less and less important, which in turn makes having a full desktop less and less important. Are things like workspaces, are we going to do things like streaming applications instead of streaming desktops? Do you see that becoming more of a normal? And what does Citrix provide or recommend for customers that are looking at that kind of a decision?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I feel like that's the some of the objections we're hearing at Citrix right now is, well, you guys are hosting this legacy application that's client server right now, but that application is going to a SaaS based world, and honestly, our answer to that is, okay, great. How are you securing that application? SaaS-based applications are great. Obviously, you can restrict them with whatever identity provider you're looking at. But what about the cut, copy, paste, print? As Josh said, the anti-screen scraping, the key logging, and stuff like that. When you get into the workspace, there's a feature in there that's called access control, and basically allows all that security policies to kind of be in there. And really what that allows the user to do, or I guess the user to consume their SaaS-based application, but from the administrative standpoint, we can do all that other stuff that's out there. We can actually launch a SaaS-based application in a secure containerized browser that has no interaction with the underlying system except for its internet connection, and being able to, display that SaaS-based application in that window, and giving all that security policies around that. And that's where we see a lot of that kind of going. Along with that, we're developing some stuff around, micro applications is kind of what we're calling it. You guys may have seen this, Josh. You were at Summit. This was, Workspace with Intelligence. So we're actually looking at, some of these SaaS-based applications. Think of like the Workdays of the world, Salesforces of the world, Jira. If you guys are, looking at any programming technologies and stuff like that, these are monolithic applications. One of the cool examples that I like to use is, I'm an employee that I travel, for my job. So I do a lot of expenses. To get into Concur and do a whole bunch of expense reports, for the employee, it takes a couple minutes and tying receipts for that. But as a manager, you try to approve those, and you got to go through a whole bunch of clicks and find the right place in the report, find the right report. Our idea is bring it into the workspace and just be able to have the user look at all the components that make up that expense report and go ahead and just approve it right away. We're not having to do any sign on into Concur or anything like that. Again, I'm not picking on Concur. There's a whole bunch of other applications that are there, but using that as my example, that's really where we're focused in on right now. That access control is really something that I feel like is very unutilized at this point from a lot of customers. There's a lot that actually own it that aren't even taking advantage of it.
Yeah, and the only thing I had to add is with for virtual apps and desktops, there's a couple of model offerings there, right, where they can kind of help you introduce that at Citrix Workspaces. But formerly XenApp and Zen Desktop, you have that on-premise. So if you think on-premise, you have Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktops. You have that model that's on-prem. Then you have going into the cloud under Citrix Cloud, you have the Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop service. So you have the ability to choose where perhaps if you want to do virtual desktops, or if you don't need a virtual desktop, you can do virtual apps. And if you have those types of apps, such as SaaS apps, then, with that new Citrix Workspace client, you have the ability to do that access control and serve that up. And again, that technology, that micro apps technologies, the intelligent workspace is a real nice looking forward future feature that is definitely we're gonna see a lot more of.
Anything else from either of you guys that you want to just bring up that we haven't discussed?
So I would say I think it was like sometime last week I received some information, and I'm actually looking forward to it. That it seems like Citrix is going to launch some a virtual series starting sometime this month. That sharing of information, best practices, and working from home. So I don't know if Ray, you have any more information on that, but that's something that kind of like I wanted to just highlight on.
Yeah, and again, one of the things we probably do a very bad job at Citrix is promoting some of our ongoing webinar series. So if you go out to citrix.com/events with an S, we actually have a lot of our webinars out there. And I'm kind of just looking off the page right now. I do know we're doing those, those subject matter expert calls and how the new norm or how the COVID is, changing the way that we work. I haven't seen too many details come out about that yet internally, but I do know that we are trying to kick that off like next week for the kind of the first series. So I would say we're probably going to post it on that citrix.com/events link that I mentioned, and I would make sure that you check that out and just kind of check back every once in a while to make sure you're getting all the latest and greatest that's out there.
The other thing I wanted to mention that was software called Speedify was pretty good. And like if you're one that experiences speed challenges with your internet provider when working from home, what's pretty cool about this is that you can actually combine those internet connections from like your Wi-Fi or your cellular, the LTE or things like that, right? So you can combine that to boost the performance. And so basically it spreads those individual packets across a channel bond. So it's real nice to see how you can improve your uploading, downloading video or voice conferencing. And
yeah, it was actually funny that you bring that up. I actually got an email on that from one of my colleagues that's out in the St. Louis area. Actually lives on, I want to say 40 or so acres. And he actually cannot get internet at his house. So he actually has multiple LTE carriers that he's actually using that software to kind of bond together. One of the internet providers wanted him to pay like $25,000 or something like that to run a line from the street to his house. So, and he said that was absurd. So he actually, built actually a shed very close to the road away from his house that he, has internet at. And he's just working on a way of, actually he's working on a satellite link. He was telling us all via email between the two locations, between his shed and his house, which he said it's a quarter of a mile or 150 yards or something like that. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's definitely a distance that you don't want to be running copper or glass through. But he said he was using that because he's been not wanting to go out to the shed a couple times because he just didn't feel like leaving the house during this whole thing. So, but yeah, second time I've heard that this week. One other thing that a lot of people don't realize is the Netscaler or Citrix ADC actually is can do VPN technology as well. Just like the Ciscos of the world, the Pulses of the world, and stuff like that. One of the things is if you're licensed for the premium edition, which was platinum at one time, you actually are limited for unlimited connections, VPN connections into that box. So a lot of people don't realize that those licenses actually exist. A lot of people don't realize that it can do that because a lot of people don't use it for it. But I do have some customers that do have that VPN set up, and using either always on or a traditional click and log in VPN as well.
All right, guys, we're running up to the end of our time here. Josh, I'll give you one last shot. If you have final thoughts.
Just to keep the learning curve going. I think we pretty much just want to sum it up. Those webinars that Ray mentioned, those events, Citrix user group community, all those, that's a free events, a real nice way to keep that learning curve going on in regards to things with Citrix or their integrations and things like that. So it's a real nice opportunity.
Ray?
Yeah, I would echo what Josh would say on that. I feel, since I've gotten into the field out of college, I felt like I've learned more, on the job than I ever did in college. And that was probably my first year. Make sure your learning's never going away. Make sure you take advantage of everything that's out there. Even if you have to, you can't watch it live. You have to watch the recording. I know that myself, and Josh and other people in the community are always willing to talk about, successes, failures, or, whatever the case may be, or, just pick your brain on technology. The Citrix community is awesome for that. Everybody's willing to help. There's a lot of people that have come up with ways. One of the things I talked about was a PowerShell script to map remote PC. But everybody's willing to help. This is something that we've had in the Citrix community for quite some time.
Okay. Well, thank you both for your time. Much appreciated. And I'll see you guys both at Citrix Synergy Online.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Sounds good.
Take care.
Thank you.